going to get smarter because we have a question from a smarty named Micah. Micah asks, Blair, am I allowed to say disabled? Yes. And let's talk about disability, ableism, and more with featured educator Kia Brown. Let's get smarter, y'all. Get smarter with Blair Imani. Today's lesson is brought to you by my Smarties on Patreon. Patreon allows me to create this high quality content even when sponsors aren't sponsoring me, and that's huge. You can go to patreon.com/Blair Imani, and for $2 a month and up, support my work. Not only my work, but the work of folks like Ren Fernandez Kim, who's behind the camera.
Hi!
And Lasur, who does my editing, Cam Uzea, who does my graphic design, Shelby Rassler, who does my music, and everyone behind the scenes who's making this stuff happen. So, I encourage you to do that, and without further ado, let's get into the lesson. So, what are we getting smarter about today? That would be disability. Now, the question was, can I say disabled? Well, that's a great question, and it's not so much about whether or not that term is appropriate, it is, but the apprehensions behind it. The reasoning we might not want to come right out and say disabled. Sometimes people use euphemisms, basically dancing around the point of what we're discussing. Things like differently abled, specially abled, things that are imprecise and kind of reveal the fact that people don't want to directly discuss disability. So, what is disability? According to scholar, activist, writer, and friend of mine, Rebecca Coakley, disability can be seen as a lens that crosses all communities and centers on the health implications and infinite creativity of a people subjected to ableism. Rebecca mentioned ableism. Ableism is a system of oppression that harms disabled people and prioritizes abled people. And this is a framework created by Imani Barbarin, who I highly recommend you check out. She goes by Crutches and Spice online and taught me so much of what I know about having the conversation around disability. Ableism has consequences. It incorrectly says that disabled people must fix themselves. What? No. We must fix a world that makes things inaccessible to disabled people. And today we have a featured educator to specifically help us get smarter about disability. And that would be Kia Brown, a dear friend of mine who's generously decided to spend some time with us. Kia Brown is a Black disabled journalist, author, screenwriter, actress, model. She's also featured in countless publications. She created the hashtag Disabled and Cute, which is so important because it reframes the way that we look at desirability, that it's not something exclusive to abled people, but that anybody can be cute. And it's also important to name it. I mean, yeah, say out loud that you are beautiful, particularly in a world that says you aren't. She's also featured in my book, Modern Herstory. And now, without further ado, let's get into that interview. Hey Smarties, Blair Imani here with my dear friend Kia Brown, who is a journalist, screenwriter, author, and actress. And so we're here to talk about our question of the day from a Smartie named Micah, who asks, Blair, can I say disabled? And before we jump right into that, I'd love for Kia to talk a little bit about your work in disability rights advocacy, both through your lived experience and also in your work in the public realm.
Yeah, so a lot of the work that I do with regard to disability is sort of identity based. I want to make sure that people understand that disability is not a monolith. You know, we come into the community with a whole host of different types of disability. Some of those are physically visible, some of those are not. And I think that a lot of the work that I do focuses on the necessary issues of representation in our mainstream media and helping people understand the importance of listening to the people within the community.
Can you provide some context for people? Like, what does it really mean when we say, like, the disability community isn't a monolith and that there's not enough representation? Because I think that folks can think of shows that have disability representation, but maybe not disabled actors playing that representation.
Yes, and it's true. A lot of shows that even have a disabled person on them, one, they're usually not of color, they're usually not women. For me, in my case, I'm a Black disabled woman who is also queer. You don't see me when you see these representations. Often what you see instead is someone pretending to be disabled, who is a wheelchair user, who doesn't like themselves, doesn't think that they're worthy. And so when I'm talking about representation, I'm talking about representation that allows us to experience every type of emotion, that allows us to be seen as a full group of people rather than just a white guy who is a wheelchair user who dislikes himself.
When I do see disability representation, it's in one of two forms. Like you just said, somebody who's pretending to be disabled or is themselves not representative of more than one axis of disability representation. And two, we see disability representation on like different websites, and it'll be what is often called inspiration porn. Can you break that down?
Yeah. So inspiration porn is the creation of art or memes in every form that allows non-disabled people to feel better about themselves because the videos or the pictures or what have you are marketed to say, hey, at least you're not living your life like that. I think oftentimes what happens with inspiration porn in particular is that the autonomy is taken from the disabled person completely. It's like we stop being people and we become fodders for this idea that disability is the world's worst possible thing. And I said on social media a couple weeks ago, like, I am not your worst case scenario. I am my dream come true. And I think a lot of times what inspiration porn does is take away the autonomy of disabled people and tell us that we should feel horrible about who we are and what we are, and that we should only accept the pity granted to us, or that we should be excited about the fact that somebody else is celebrating us for getting out of bed in the morning.
And I see this frequently. I think that I've learned a lot from you and Amani Barbarin about
Mm-hmm.
the way that autonomy is denied. And then also we're supposed to applaud that autonomy being denied. It's very bizarre. It's infantilizing. And I
Yep.
think that from what I've learned from you and Amani, that it connects back to this idea that this ableist idea that disabled people don't know what's in their best interest. And that's a myth. So let's break
Yes.
that down too.
People think that you're right. Yes, that's exactly it. People think that we couldn't possibly know what we want. We couldn't possibly have any desires, dreams, or hopes of our own. That all we are is the burden to a caretaker or a family member or a loved one of some sort, because I think people often believe that we're not people in the first place. We're just roadblocks along the way to something else. And living in that ableist idea is so exhausting because it's like you constantly have to prove yourself.
I've seen so much how disabled people have been deprioritized, even in the beginning of the pandemic around this time last year, where there were shortages in beds and nurses were being made to choose whose life was worth saving, and they were doing that in a ableist manner. How has
Yeah.
that been like for you, if you don't mind sharing, just from a personal standpoint? Because I think on a daily basis, like for myself and for you as well, being Black, like we see the police violence and it constantly is a threat of our humanity being stripped away. And then so the added layer of being Black and disabled, if you could share what that's like and how folks can, stomp that out.
Yeah, I mean, it's exhausting. I wish I had a better answer. It's exhausting to live in a world where you just feel like at every corner your life is at risk and not as many people care who need to. Like, I think a couple months ago, I'd say I had a scare where I thought I might have had COVID, and I was petrified at the idea of having to go into a hospital and then be told that my life isn't valuable enough because I'm disabled. And so I took my test and I didn't have, thank goodness. But I also just think that, like, living as a disabled Black woman, I know that if I'm to get sick in any way, my life is somehow considered less just because I have a pre existing condition. It's the idea that disability is, again, the world's worst case scenario, so that's not why they wouldn't want to save me. I think it's frustrating to live in a world where I feel like my life holds less value to people because I have a disability that I have no control over and that I shouldn't have to wish away in order to have care.
And so going back to our question from Smarty Micah, can I say disabled? I think that to answer this question, we have to address why there's concern around saying it.
Well, first of all, I hate the euphemisms. What happens with these euphemisms is that they're often employed to make non disabled people feel better. Like, if disabled makes you uncomfortable, I have to say I don't care. I have to say that my comfort should matter more. If I want to be called disabled, which I do, I much prefer disabled, I don't need euphemisms like differently abled or special needs or handy capable, because that's not what it is. I live every day as a disabled person. I am disabled. It's not a dirty word. It's not a bad word. It is the word that I prefer. Now, I won't say that that's everybody in the community. It differs really. So it depends on who you ask, and you should always ask first. But For me, the euphemisms just make people feel better about themselves, or their comfort is placed first. And when I say that I'm disabled, it's me taking back my own autonomy and taking back my own desire to use the language that makes me feel comfortable. I think that a lot of times people sort of scoff at the idea of saying disabled because then it makes them think about their own possibility of being disabled. You know, disability can happen to anyone at any moment. It doesn't matter who you are in the world. It can happen to you. And I think people's discomfort with the word disabled and with disabled people in general is their fear of what it would be like for them to be disabled. And that really just makes me sad because I think people believe that disability is a death sentence. That disability means that you don't have a life well lived or a life that you can love. And that goes again back to the representation that we have in media. And the reality is this: disability isn't easy. I'm not going to sit here and say that. It's definitely not easy, but it's not a death sentence, and it's not something that needs to be pitied. It's something that needs to be celebrated and respected and cared for in the same way that we care for everybody else. Disability should have that same care. You should realize that when you're telling yourself or others that all disability is a pity party or is euphemisms, what you're saying is the people in the community, whether they're kids or adults, should only have that as their lived experience. That we don't
Mm.
deserve joy and kindness and excitement. Because the truth is, we do deserve those things. And we can't have them if we live in a world where people are so tied up in whether or not they should say disabled because disabled feels dirty instead of giving us the respect and the rights that we deserve. And we do live in a world that absolutely treasures people who come into disability versus those of us who live with it. I've been disabled since 91. I I have multiple disabilities. And I think that what happens is people see people who come into disability like, "Oh, this is who they are now, but this is what they lost." And because they
Mm.
can't put a narrative of what disabled people who were born with disabilities have lost, they don't know what to do. We look at things like remote work, and they weren't possible when disabled people were asking. They weren't possible when we were hoping for that dream job to allow us to work from home. But as soon as we needed it and other people who weren't disabled needed it, then it was possible. And even now, we're still not getting the same opportunities that non disabled people are getting with remote work because now the market is full of more people. And even though it's a possibility now, those positions are still going to non disabled people. And disability is honestly so much about adapting and adjusting to a world not designed for us. What we need is policy change. What we need is people in our corner willing to fight for us because it shouldn't always just be the job of the marginalized to do the work to fight for us. We need allies and we need people ready and willing to say, hey, no, that's not right. We shouldn't be doing it this way. We should also include X, Y, and Z person because disabled people love the exact same things you do. So when you're creating something for disabled people, remember that we are in every aspect of this world. Everybody that deserves the chance to feel seen, and be celebrated.
Absolutely. So, Kia, before we go, thank you so much for helping us get smarter today. Do you want to leave us with any final thoughts?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, thank you for having me. You know that I adore you. I just want to say that joy is revolutionary, that it is okay to be happy and excited and eager about what's to come in the world, whether you're disabled or not. To me, joy is revolutionary, and I absolutely traffic in joy, and I traffic in the idea that it's okay to be excited about things and to talk about what you want out loud and to put everything that you've ever dreamed of in existence. And so if you leave here with anything else, know that I believe your joy and your excitement is just as valid as any other emotion that you might feel in the coming days, weeks, months, years of the rest of your life. Choose
That's so
joy.
beautiful. Choose joy, absolutely. Make sure to check out Kia Brown. Linked in my bio on Instagram is all of her info, and also below on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. And let's do a little outro. Well, Smarties, I hope that you got smarter. Make sure to follow Kia Brown, as well as the other educators I featured at the beginning of this talk, including Rebecca Coakley, Imani Barbarin, and, It's so exciting to be able to support the folks who are doing this work, and I wouldn't be able to do that without your support on Patreon. Again, you can go to patreon.com/BlairImani. These funds actually made it so I could hire Kia to appear in this video, because it's not enough to say, hey, lend your expertise. You have to be able to compensate people for that work. So thank you, Kia. Thank you, Patreon Smarties. And thank you to my team. Again, Ren Fernandez Kim behind the camera.
Yo-ho!
And Lasur, who does my video editing, Cami Zaya, who does my graphic design, and Shelby Rassler, who does my audio. And if you want to get smarter about a specific subject that I have not covered yet, you can go to blairimani.com/questions and send your question there. I'll follow up, and maybe you'll get featured like our Smarty of the Day, Micah.